If you've been doing everything right and your body still isn't responding, this is not because you're failing. For a lot of high achieving women, doing more is the instinct, more control, more discipline, more restriction. But what if the reason your body feels stuck isn't because it needs more effort, but because it feels unsafe? In this episode, I want to show you why pushing harder can actually keep your metabolism, hormones, and your nervous system locked in protection, and what your body is really asking for instead. Hi, I'm Janell Yule, and this is the Transformation Show, where we talk about gut health, hormones, and nervous system regulation in a way that actually makes sense. So let's dive in. Let's talk about why effort stops working and what to listen for when it does. And this topic is actually pretty near and dear to me because I have firsthand experienced this myself. And I've worked with so many women that get to midlife, so 40s, 50s, and they say to me, what I've always done is no longer working. And that was and has been a piece of my story when I hit my early 40s. And so, what our instinct is to do is when we are not seeing results, and results could be releasing weight, results could be, getting rid of symptoms, results could be having more energy, better sleep, improved mood. So, this can be a whole host of things. Is we think to ourselves, I need to do more, restrict more, this supplement, this biohack, this thing that I have seen on social media. And the message is more, more, more. And what I have said for years is that more is not always better. Better is better. And especially when it comes to social media, because social media is so good in the sense that we can get information and we have access to information that we never would have had before. And I am so grateful for social media because maybe that is how we have connected, is via social media, and you found my work. And so social media is not negative or bad. What social media is, especially when it comes to the health space and women's health and hormones and perimenopause and menopause and gut health and nervous system, is it's a conversation. It is not a consultation. And a lot of women, especially because we are the ones that are marketed to. We are, I am in my 40s. And so that is perimenopause is a hot topic right now on social media. And when I am working with women, it's all about creating awareness first, because we need awareness before we change. Instead of just changing for the sake of, we saw this supplement or we saw this person and they lost 30 pounds and they were doing this supplement and implementing this strategy, and then we go and do that thing. What we need to realize is we don't have that person's life. We don't have that person's level of stress. We don't have that person's belief system. We don't have that, we don't live that person's life. And so what that person does for them may not actually be appropriate for us. And this is why it is so important to work with somebody who isn't just going to throw things at you. They are really going to dive in and help you to create awareness, because when I am working with someone, my goal is for them to start to drop into their own body, for them to start to create the awareness so that they can take what the work we're doing together long term. And for many women, this desire to do more it's been programmed into us. And so we're going to get into a little bit of mindset here. And it often comes from a place of control. And we think that if we can just control what goes in our mouth, how much goes in our mouth, when it goes in our mouth, or we can control how much movement pattern we have, or what we're doing for movement, or what that movement is, then we're going to get the results. And so it's this like restrict, control, discipline, but not necessarily in a good way. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. And again, this has been part of my story, and this was part of my story very early on. I will say I had a disordered eating pattern. And now I realize that I knew that I couldn't control people. I knew that I couldn't control circumstances. So what I could control was what I put in my mouth or what I didn't put in my mouth. And so it was a form of all of this stuff outside of me I don't have control over, so I'm going to buckle down and control this. And that led to, like I said, disordered eating when I was in my late teens. And the deep underlying belief here is usually, not always, and usually it's some form of I'm not enough. And I think a lot of women can relate to that. And this has been a process for me over the course of the last 20 plus years from that time until today. And we think that if we just do more or we just get the result that we desire, whether it is a pant size or on the scale or a certain look, then I will finally be enough. And the reality is that the opposite of not enough is self-love. And this conversation is not about that. And I'm sure we will have conversations about that because that is definitely a part of my work. And so when we can't stick with it long term, or we're not seeing the results that we desire, then what happens is we move into frustration. We move into the shame spiral, as I call it. We move into the self-blame. It's like, well, it's me and I just can't do it, or I just don't have enough willpower, or I'm lazy. And from this place, our nervous system is getting the message that what we are doing is actually a threat. And depending on our capacity, it's likely that we are moving into a place of shutdown, and we're moving into a place, and that is swinging that pendulum to that nothing. So we're in this like, I'm gonna do all the things, more. And then our system is like, this is too much, right? So our nervous system perceives something as too much, too soon, too fast, or not enough. And then we shut down and we swing to this nothing. And this tends to be a cycle for a lot of women. And this cycle can absolutely show up this time of year. And I've talked about that in previous episodes. And so from this place of shutdown, our nervous system actually thinks it is protecting us because, again, if we go back to what I just said, our nervous system is perceiving what we're doing as a threat. And so from this place of shutdown, or what's actually called your dorsal vagal part of your nervous system, we lose inspiration and we lose energy. And I use the word energy intentionally rather than motivation because I have a really... This is a myth. I have a really interesting relationship with the word motivation. I don't think we have motivation. We create motivation. That's a whole different conversation. And so we lose energy. We lose that inspiration because we're in this all or nothing, pendulum swing, and our nervous system is either activated or shut down. We're never actually getting to a place where it feels, I'm going to use the word regulation. And so this is definitely something that I have experienced because of that identity of being a high achieving woman and a lot of the women I work with. And part of that identity of being a high achieving woman is the control and often that feeling of not enough. And so it's, if I achieve more, and that achievement doesn't necessarily mean just around health and fitness. That achievement could be in your business, in your career, in your finances, relational, whatever. And it's also usually rooted in perfectionism, which comes from fear. And so it's like, well, if I'm not perfect, if I don't look perfect, if I don't have the perfect, healthy, and fit body, there's this fear of not being enough, the fear of not being liked, the fear of belonging. And so this is a larger conversation than just physical. It also is driven by programming patterns and belief systems that have likely been with you for decades. And for high achieving women, effort works in a lot of other areas in our life. You know, in our business maybe, or in our career, or in taking care of our household and our family. It's like more effort often, not always, but often will produce more results. And then we try to apply this to our body in midlife, and our body goes, So one of my favorite books around, around the nervous system really is When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate. I love Gabor's work. Very profound, very powerful. And so if you're looking for a book recommendation, because this is landing with you, When the Body Says No, I highly recommend it. And so our body doesn't always respond to more effort. It actually responds to safety, connection, predictability, rhythms, consistency. And in a culture and in a world that rewards discipline, not regulation, and for a lot of women, discipline becomes a source of worth, like I talked about earlier, rather than a source of self-love. So I do think that being disciplined and doing what you say you're going to do can actually be a form of self-love, until either it isn't, or if there is the intention behind it that if I am disciplined, then that builds up my worth, that builds up my enoughness. And this is something that I have realized lately, as my body is saying, you're not going to do the same things that you used to be doing, is discipline was actually a source of worth for me rather than a source of self-love. And so a lot of times this work is really about changing your relationship with things. I had a client session actually today, and one of the things she was so great, or is so grateful for, in the work that we're doing together and thanked me for, is that I am supporting her and helping her shift her relationship with food, because it has been pretty rocky to say the least. And that is and again, that was my relationship with food for years, until I really did the work to shift that. So here's what's actually happening from a physiological standpoint. So I went into a little bit of the mindset piece of things and the nervous system piece of things, but here's actually what's happening on a physiological level. Is your body is interpreting more, whatever that is, whether that's more restriction, whether that's more effort, whether that's, just stacking things upon things upon things. And so all of a sudden you're spending all of your time trying to heal. And that's what I refer to as the healing hustle. So your body and your nervous system actually start to perceive that as a threat. And so your stress load is higher, not to mention that you probably have other stressors in your life, whether that is aging parents, whether that is children that are, getting older and becoming adults, whether that is in your career, your business, finances, whatever it is, we all experience stress. And so your stress load is greater than your recovery capacity. And your nervous system then shifts into this protection mode. It shifts into shutdown. It's like, no more, because this is too much, too soon, too fast, or not enough. And all of this impacts cortisol. And cortisol is your stress hormone that is secreted by the adrenal glands. And the adrenal glands are simply taking orders from upstream from the pituitary gland, and the pituitary gland is taking its orders from your hypothalamus. So you have something called your HPA axis, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenals. And so cortisol will first become potentially too high, and then over time, if this continues, and this was my story, it will plummet. And my cortisol bottomed out. I wasn't producing cortisol, and I didn't have cortisol available to me. And so my body was like, we are shutting this party down, literally. And how did I know this? I did something called a Dutch test, so a dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. That's something that I offer. You can head over to thetransformationlife.com and learn more about that. So cortisol, and so cortisol is just one hormone. Cortisol is actually antagonistic of another hormone called leptin. And we'll probably talk a lot about leptin because it's a master hormone, and it's a hormone, in my opinion, and in the work that I do, that has been left out of the conversation. Blood sugar, insulin, that conversation is happening. Cortisol conversation is happening. The leptin conversation is you're less likely to be familiar with that. And so, in short, cortisol is the master hormone of energy regulation. So it tells your body, we have enough resources, you can let go of any excess weight, or it tells the body there's a threat, hold on to everything, conserve resources. And so if cortisol is antagonistic to leptin, if we've got cortisol too high or too low, the brain, you become what's called leptin resistance, and the brain is like, we're not letting go of excess weight here. And so this is the example of the woman who is eating healthy. She's not eating a standard American diet. She's moving her body daily. So likely this is the woman who is on social media and is seeing eat 30 grams of protein with every single meal, and she's doing that, and then she's maybe adding in another 20 to 30 grams. So she's hitting 100 to 120 grams of protein a day, which is a place to start, and it likely is not, it's not the end for most women, I'll say that. She's moving her body. Maybe she's getting that message of lift heavy, and so she's moving her body daily, and she's doing some intense exercises. And yet the weight won't budge, or she's starting to have energy drops, fatigue. Maybe her mood isn't the greatest. She's more irritable, more snappy. Maybe she also is like sleep has been disrupted, or maybe she just doesn't feel good. So a lot of women come to me and say, I just don't feel like myself. And this is the culmination of a lot of things that are happening in midlife. Or this is the woman who has gone to her doctor and all of her labs look normal, yet she doesn't feel good. She feels anything but normal. She doesn't, like I said, she doesn't feel like herself. And this is likely because the labs and the blood work that your doctor is running is incomplete. And it is also because the labs that they are running, they are not looking at those through a functional lens. So there is the disease state that they are looking at them through, and then there's the state that, like the optimal state that I look at labs through. And so again, this was my story. I couldn't lose weight. I was experiencing weight loss resistance. I was napping every single day. I was going to bed at 8 o'clock at night. I was a lot of fun to be around. And yet I went to the doctor, and the labs that they did run were incomplete, and the ones they did run were normal. I'm using quotations if you're listening on the podcast platform. And so that's where functional testing can come in. And that's like the Dutch test that I referred to. So again, if you head over to thetransformationlife.com, you can learn more about functional testing. So hormone testing is just one of the functional tests that I offer and can do. So I want to offer you a reframe here. Is if you are feeling stuck, maybe it's not the fact that you're lazy. Maybe it's not the fact that you don't have willpower. Maybe it is actually not a lack of effort. Stuck can equal your adaptive response. So your nervous system is adapting, your hormones are adapting, which is affecting things like your metabolism. So your body is actually giving you communication. Your body is always communicating with you. It's just most of us are not taught what that communication means, and we're also not taught how to listen because we are focused on a lot of outward distractions. We are thinking that the answer that we need is outside of ourselves. And in the work that I do with the women that I work with, I want to lead you back to yourself. I believe that the greatest teacher will lead you back to yourself. That is where the magic is, because that is what you can take with you long term. So where do you go from here? Number one, notice where effort increases when fear increases. So this fear of, maybe it's a fear of not enough. Maybe it's a fear of symptoms that you're experiencing. Maybe it's a fear of whatever. And then that inkling of, okay, I just got to do more, and that's going to be the answer. Notice where that's showing up in your life, because that's information, and there's a pattern there, and there's something there for you. And then begin tracking stress signals, not just behaviors. Instead of tracking your movement, you start to notice, interesting. When I do my movement first thing in the morning and I'm fasted, I have more cravings later in the day. Or I notice when I'm, on the days where I'm doing intense movement, my energy just flatlines, especially if I'm doing it fasted. So you start to create awareness. You start to look at what is going on rather than just pushing through regardless of what your body is communicating to you. And this is where the somatic work of actually doing a check-in with your body really comes in. And this is really, really important work that I do with my clients. And then shifting from what should I do to what does my body need? What do I need right now? That is one of the most powerful questions that you can ask yourself. And I want to be very clear here. There's a difference between what you need and what you want. And so maybe what you need is to go for a walk, and what you want is to sit on the couch and scroll or watch Netflix. So there is a practice here. There is a dance of, understanding the difference between a need and a want. And something that came in very, very clear for me when I took some time off over the holidays was this message of let your body lead. Because I have had moments, I had a moment about 2 years ago where I was experiencing a symptom. And the symptom could have been, I guess we could say, a significant symptom. And I paused and I asked and this is the somatic check-in work. I asked my body, what are you trying to tell me right now? And I heard very, very clearly, stop pushing so hard. And lo and behold, the symptom that could have been pretty significant went away. When I really, truly dropped in to what is it that I need. And having a coach, having a mentor, having a guide that can help you to do this work is so, so powerful. So if you've been feeling frustrated with your body, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are not failing. It is likely not a lack of effort. Sometimes stuck is simply your body asking for safety, not more effort. It's asking you to listen. It's asking you to pause and say, what do I need? So I would love to hear from you in the comments. Where have you noticed yourself doing more when slowing down feels uncomfortable? Because most of the women that I work with will say that chaos and busyness feels normal, and the slowing down, the calm, the peace, actually on some level, if they're being truly honest, feels uncomfortable. And so if these conversations are feeling grounding for you, please make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube by hitting that bell icon. And if you are following on the podcast, make sure that you are subscribed so that we can keep having this conversation together.